What is up, everyone? Welcome to the Doctor of Stuff channel. I'm your host, Doctor of Stuff. You can call me Doc. I'm a crypto and stock investor with a background in financial analysis. And as a disclaimer, everything I say here, nothing I say here should be considered financial advice. And on top of that, I do want to issue the disclaimer that I am not an attorney. And so anything I present here is just my thoughts and views on everything here. So I wanted to do this second part of a video in response to an individual on Twitter who has made some pretty substantial claims against the Ecomi team, basically saying that it is one of the largest or blatant frauds in all of crypto. And I had made an initial response video to this individual's posts, and then they have since made some counter arguments to my counter arguments. So I felt like it was necessary for me to make just this last video. I'm not going to keep doing this. The individual also said that they're not going to kind of offer rebuttal. We'll just call it as it is. We'll lay out our arguments and we'll go from there. But I think it's so important to address some of the massive claims here. I feel like I did that initially. I was kind of surprised that we got another rebuttal. So I'm going to go a little bit deeper into things and hopefully clarify some of the statements that this person has made, and we'll just go from there. So I'm going to present this screen here. Let's see if I can't get the initial. Okay. So let's see, sharing this here, what you guys see. All right. So let's go through this. Here's this individual, and look, to be honest, I first of all have to say that I appreciate the fact that even though me and this individual disagree, and I vehemently disagree with a lot of the points that this individual is saying, that we have kept this civil, right? And we're trying to attack the arguments and not the people. And I hope that people can continue to do that, right? When we disagree, that we look at just attacking the arguments. So they say they watched my video with respect here, the counters to my counters, and then they pose a question at the end. So the first question said that I say that they are regarding OMI as being comparably egregious to FTX's FTT token. So just as a reminder of what this individual said, right, their initial post was that, I'm just going to read it here. OMI is one of the most blatant frauds in crypto, and it puts the Ecomi company and by extension Vivi at unnecessary legal risk. So basically they're saying that this fraud, there are legal implications to what Ecomi has done, right? Committed this fraud. And I want to point that out again, right? Because they're saying there are legal implications, and then sometimes this individual backs up and is like, I'm not saying that they did anything wrong or that it was illegal, but I'm like, you just said that there's legal implications here. So you're contradicting yourself. But so they say, I'm merely saying that OMI is one of the worst, or merely saying that OMI is one of the worst doesn't mean it's just as bad as the others that fall into that category. For example, saying that someone with a net worth of $1 billion is one of the richest people in the world doesn't mean that you think that they are at the level of Jeff Bezos, who, while also falling in that same category, is worth more, like 160x more. Well, there's a couple issues with this. You don't give any other examples, right? So, like, I don't know what I'm supposed to assume, I guess, when I read that, the most blatant fraud. You're looping it in this category, and you don't say that while FTX was crazy, and that's probably one of the biggest frauds, OMI doesn't reach that level. It's much lower, but it's still really blatant, right? You don't clarify that. So I don't know how the reader is going to understand what you meant. And on top of that, you made a separate post, which I'm not going to go back and forth with all the different posts that you've made, kind of walking back on your comments or changing things. But let's see. You had said something. Oh, here we go. I got to find my notes. There's a lot of notes here. So Okay, jumping down. Back. Okay, so one of the comments when you were walking it back, you said, what you meant that there was a fraud in the 5 to 10% of instances of fraud that you have run into in this space, and that it shouldn't have been, and it should have been obvious to us, the reader, or me, the reader, who is responding, that you couldn't have surveyed all of the tens of thousands of cryptocurrencies out there. Well, there's a big difference, right? And I think that it's important to point out that you didn't say this. You said one of the most blatant frauds in crypto. You didn't say, out of all the projects that I've experienced, which maybe I've seen 20 or 30, like this is pretty egregious from what I've seen. You said all of crypto, right? That encompasses the tens of thousands of tokens out there. So I don't know how I'm supposed to assume that you're not making that same assumption. So I'm just touching on this because this is in your response. It really isn't a full part of any of the rest of the argument, but what it does, and I said this before, is I feel like your initial statement is sensationalistic, and it points to a bias that you already have, where you're trying to indicate to the reader, like, hey, check this out. Look at how bad this is. And you're drawing the individual in, but now you're backtracking and saying, well, actually, it's not, on the level of FTX. It's maybe not one of the most egregious in the entire space, but maybe of the 5 to 10% of the tokens that I've seen, it's that egregious. That's a whole different statement. And you could have chose to put that out there, and you didn't. And when I've read your writing and how you write, you're a very thoughtful individual. So that omission, I feel like, is meaningful. And I had to point that out. Okay, so second one, and guys, this is where I'm going to dig in deep. So kind of buckle up here. They say right here, you said Ecomi didn't sell directly to U.S. buyers, so the Howey test doesn't apply. Well, I didn't say it was necessarily sold by Ecomi in an illegal way. Pause. Right? Let's read what you said. Right? You didn't say it initially, but you implied it. You said that OMI was sold as an unregistered security in key jurisdictions. The sale of an unregistered security, right, in a jurisdiction in which that's would be illegal, is illegal. So, I mean, like, you basically did say that. You basically said that Ecomi did it in an illegal way by selling an unregistered security in key jurisdictions. So I don't know how else to address that, but the fact that it's being traded on marketplaces accessible to U.S. residents puts it within the jurisdiction of the SEC. True, it does. Here, unlike, okay, and this is where we're going to dive in deep, because this is where I feel like the leader is substantially misled in this comment. Says here, unlike in the Ripple case, so they're saying in the Ripple case, this is different, and we're going to dive into the Ripple case. It's entirely obvious that anyone who bought OMI knew about Ecomi and was making their purchase based on the expectation of profit from Ecomi's efforts. So the individual is trying to demonstrate how it meets the Howey test, right? And that by purchasing the token, we are entering into an investment contract, which is a type of security. Okay. And then they say, Coinbase was sued for this very reason, for allowing transactions of what, according to the SEC, amounted to sales of unregistered securities on their exchange. Okay. So I'm going to have to share a different screen here and present a different screen about the Ripple case and the summary judgment that just happened in July, and how I say that the readers the author here misrepresents this Ripple case and the outcome of the Ripple case, and why that's extremely significant. Okay, so let's share this. Hopefully this works. Okay. All right. So let me get into this. So that I can also see. All right, well, we're going to have to go through it this way. So here is the summary judgment, right? So there's a lot of legal things. I've highlighted it. I've read through it all, and I've tried to just highlight the important parts. I just want to show you, I'm starting at the top here, right? Ripple Labs is the defendants here against the SEC. So here's kind of the background on it. We'll go through this and basically what the background is saying. So Ripple, through wholly owned subsidiaries, sold XRP directly to certain counterparties, primarily institutional buyers, hedge funds, sophisticated investors, basically, right, pursuant to written contracts, which then they basically say anytime we're saying institutional sales in this document, right, it's referring to this. Second, Ripple sold XRP on digital asset exchanges programmatically or through the use of trading algorithms. So either on a centralized exchange or a decentralized exchange. Ripple's XRP sales on these digital asset exchanges were blind bid-ask transactions. Ripple did not know who was buying the XRP, and the purchaser did not know who was selling it. So this is all kind of facts of the case. So let's scroll down some more here. So there's just a lot of procedural background, things like that. Legal standard kind of talks about what a summary judgment is, what this document is, what it means. Okay. The question before the court is whether defendants offered to sell or sold XRP as a security. Specifically, the SEC alleges that defendants sold XRP as an investment contract, which is a type of security defined in the Securities Act. Okay. So that's the SEC's claim, right? So we're going to kind of get into this. So here's the full allegations that the SEC is saying, okay, that XRP engaged in three categories of unregistered XRP offers and sales. First, institutional sales under written contracts for which it received $728 million. So basically like pre-seed investment, right? And this happens all the time in the crypto space where they're raising funds and they'll go to investors, and it can be like venture capital groups. It can be, in Ripple's case, right, hedge funds, institutional investors, but in general, sophisticated individuals who understand the risks that they're taking. Programmatic sales on digital asset exchanges for which it received $757 million. And then other distributions under written contracts for which it recorded $609 million. We're not going to go into that because that, to my knowledge, like Ecomi never did that. So this kind of talks about, so what happens here is now it covers first institutional sales, right? And then it's going to kind of go through the Howey test. And some of the claims that the defendants make, XRP makes, is like, hey, well, you should consider this. And in most cases, the judge is like, nope, we're not throwing that out. There's no case law. There's no basis for this argument in the past. So I'm not going to consider it. So for institutional investors, right, the summary judgment says, having considered the economic reality and totality of circumstances surrounding the institutional sales, the court concludes that Ripple's institutional sales of XRP constituted an unregistered offer and sale of investment contracts in violation of Section 5 of the Securities Act. So when Ripple went to investors in the United States and they raised funds with investment contracts, which also included kind of like vesting periods and things, which it talks about in the document, that constituted an investment contract, which is a type of security, right? And so you violated that by not registering this security. Now, again, Ripple raised in the United States, and that's where the SEC has jurisdiction for the institutional sales. The court next addresses Ripple's programmatic sales, right? The sales on exchanges, which, by the way, is where I bought my OMI tokens, where you probably bought your OMI tokens. There are very few individuals who actually purchased the OMI token at the initial pre-seed investment where like these venture capital groups signed contracts with Ecomi, okay? So the large majority of all OMI holders now are going to be from secondary sales. That is very important. Okay. The court next addresses Ripple's programmatic sales, which occurred under different circumstances than institutional sales. The SEC alleges that in the programmatic sales to public buyers on digital asset exchanges, Ripple understood that people were speculating on XRP as an investment, right? Which is what the author of this is basically saying. Hey, we were purchasing OMI on the promises that the OMI token, through the efforts of Ecomi, would go up in value. And this is what the SEC is arguing happened with people who bought XRP. So apples to apples comparison is what's happening here. Having considered, so this is the judge's determination. Having considered the economic reality of the programmatic sales, the court concludes that the undisputed record does not establish the third Howey prong, whereas the institutional buyers reasonably expected that Ripple would use the capital it received from its sales to improve the XRP ecosystem and thereby increase the price of XRP. Programmatic buyers, or secondary market purchasers like ourselves, could not reasonably expect the same. Indeed, Ripple's programmatic sales were blind bid-ask transactions, and programmatic buyers could not have known if their payments of money went to Ripple. So if I'm buying on OMI on Bit4X or something, the large majority are not going to know who's the counterparty to that sale, right? So I'm purchasing, I don't know who the seller is there. So you could not reasonably determine that, hey, when I'm buying this OMI, I know that it's actually going to the Ecomi team, and they're going to use that to then help build out VV or build out the utility for the OMI token. Since 2017, Ripple's programmatic sales represented less than 1% of the global XRP trading volume. Therefore, the vast majority of individuals who purchased XRP from digital exchanges did not invest their money in Ripple at all. An institutional buyer knowingly purchased XRP directly from Ripple pursuant to a contract. But the economic reality is that a programmatic buyer stood in the same shoes as a secondary market purchaser who did not know to whom or what it was paying its money. Further, it is not enough for the SEC to argue that Ripple explicitly targeted speculators, right? So people are like, no, they were in AMAs, which Ripple was in AMAs, right? Like they had advertisements like all over the place, right? Or that Ripple understood that people were speculating on XRP as an investment because a speculative motive on the part of the purchaser or seller does not evidence the existence of an investment contract within the meaning of the Securities Act. So just because we are purchasing hoping that the token goes up, and even if we're like, hey, I think that it's because the Ecomi team is going to do something with it, just that on its own does not evidence that it's an investment contract and therefore a security. So anyone who buys or sells, for example, a horse or an automobile, hopes to realize a profitable investment, but the expected return is not contingent upon the continuing efforts of another. The relevant inquiry is whether this speculative motive, so when we're purchasing the token and speculating that it's going to go up, derived from the entrepreneurial or managerial effort of others. Now here's where it gets interesting. It may certainly be the case that many programmatic buyers purchase XRP with an expectation of profit, but they did not derive that expectation from Ripple's efforts, as opposed to other factors such as general cryptocurrency market trends, particularly because none of the programmatic buyers were aware that they were buying XRP from Ripple. So I don't know about you, but I have no idea if any of the OMI that I purchased throughout the last 2 years ever came from an Ecomi wallet. I honestly don't know that. Of course, so it continues, and it's important that it continues. Some programmatic buyers may have purchased XRP with the expectation of profits to be derived from Ripple's efforts, which this person, the author, right, of this Twitter thread is saying is that, hey, I'm one of these people that I purchased OMI with the expectation of profits to be derived from Ecomi's efforts. However, the inquiry is an objective one, focusing on the promises and offers made to investors. It is not a search for the precise motivation of each individual participant. Here, the record establishes that with respect to programmatic sales, Ripple did not make any promises or offers because Ripple did not know who was buying the XRP, and the purchasers did not know who was selling it. In fact, many programmatic buyers were entirely unaware of Ripple's existence. So I need to touch on this because the author says, unlike in the Ripple case here, right, it's entirely obvious that anyone who bought OMI knew about Ecomi. Not true. Like, I don't know how he can substantiate that claim. I'm sure that many have, but especially during the run-up of 2021, I'll bet you that people were just like, who has a metaverse in like any sort of metaverse or is tied to NFTs in any way, shape, or form? And then they looked at that, and anything that had tied to NFT, they purchased that token because those tokens were pumping, right? And they would have had no idea necessarily who Ecomi was or what they were doing. It's just that they were tied to NFTs in some way, shape, or form. So that is very important to know. Now, some of us, yes, some of us may have understood, as I imagine that many people who purchased XRP, like myself, knew about Ripple at the time. So, but it goes on, right? The programmatic sales also lacked other factors present in the economic reality of the institutional sales, which cut in favor of finding a reasonable expectation of profits to be derived from the entrepreneurial or managerial efforts of others. For instance, the programmatic sales were not made pursuant to contracts. So when we purchased the token on the secondary market, we didn't sign a contract that contained the lockup provisions or vesting right provisions, resale restrictions, indemnification clauses, or statements of purpose. So it still goes on, right? Because I think it's important to continue to provide context as to why the judge is saying that what's happened here, these secondary market sales do not constitute an investment contract, and therefore it's not a security, and therefore we are not investors in the token. This is a big deal. Lastly, the institutional buyers were sophisticated entities, including institutional investors and hedge funds. An examination of the entirety of the parties' understandings and expectations, including the full set of contracts, expectations, and understandings centered on the sales and distribution of XRP, supports the conclusion that a reasonable investor situated in the position of the institutional buyers, so those pre-seed investors basically, would have been aware of Ripple's marketing campaigning and public statements connecting XRP's price to its own efforts. There is no evidence that a reasonable programmatic buyer who was generally less sophisticated as an investor shared similar understandings and expectations and could parse through the multiple documents and statements that the SEC highlights in the case, which includes statements sometimes inconsistent across many social media platforms and news sites from a variety of Ripple speakers with different levels of authority over an extended period of time. How many times has that happened? We've heard one thing from their marketing team, and then a different thing from the CEO, different thing from the COO, or, like where it's just like, okay, well, who knows the most about it? And so I think taking all of that into consideration, the judge says, therefore, having considered the economic reality and totality of circumstances, the court concludes that Ripple's programmatic sales, those secondary market sales, did not constitute the offer and sale of investment contracts. And ultimately, what that means for us is that we are not investors in the token. And so we cannot be defrauded as investors if we are not investors. So even though this is early on in the thread, this literally destroys his argument about the fraud claim as us of investors investing in the efforts of them and all of the utility that we were promised. It falls apart. And this is recent, right? I mean, this is July that this just came down. And by the way, there are a lot of attorneys out there that are basically saying, wow, this is a massive win for the crypto industry, because now they can basically trade anything that the SEC labels as a security from how the funds were initially raised. Well, now it can be traded on these exchanges and it's not considered a security. So here's where it gets interesting. I got to stop sharing this again. And then we've got to, oh my gosh. Oh, guys, I thought I canceled out of my stream. All right, so here we go. I've got to share the individual's thread again here. Okay, so now they say Coinbase was sued for this very reason, for allowing transactions of what, according to the SEC, amounted to sales of unregistered securities on their exchange. That's true. But what happened is the SEC sued Coinbase in, I think, June right? The determination just came out in July. And so now Coinbase hasn't been able to go back to court, but once they do, they're going to be able to point to this summary judgment and basically say, hey, this judge has basically said that these, like, selling these tokens does not constitute an investment contract, and so we are okay to sell them. And to wit, I had XRP on Coinbase, and when this lawsuit came out, it was locked. I couldn't trade it anymore, right? I can now trade XRP, which basically says that Coinbase also feels comfortable enough, even with this lawsuit that the SEC has just hit them with, in allowing the trading of XRP, because they do not believe it's a security. So I feel like I have completely demolished this entire paragraph here. And again, I don't think that is entirely obvious, and I do not believe that a judge would agree with that statement. I don't know how he can even substantiate that statement, that everyone who's bought the OMI token knows everything about OMI and the promises that have been made. I think like a lot probably do, but a lot also probably don't. And I can't even substantiate that. And like, that's the point, right? Like, is no one can actually demonstrate that. So, but I do know for a fact there was a lot of people who owned XRP during this lawsuit who absolutely know and knew who Ripple was when they were purchasing it on the secondary market. And even with that, the judge basically said, nope, it didn't meet it. So now the next one, you said that my claim of fraud was wrong because I found an arbitrary, I don't know what he thinks like arbitrary. You have to prove those 9 elements in court. I don't care what type of fraud you have. Like, you have to demonstrate that a statement was made, right? Like, I mean, I went through the 9 elements, another video, go back and watch that. So I think he just like throws that in there with extensive requirements. Yeah, there's a lot. There's a big threshold that you have to meet to prove fraud. Like, there's a lot of things. You can't just be like, oh, like, well, he promised me this and it didn't happen. Well, like, did you lose money? Because there has to be money involved to be defrauded. Like, and in this case, he's saying, I am an investor. I spent money in this investment contract, which I've just demonstrated it's not an investment contract or a security, and be, on based on the promises that Ecomi would, provide these efforts and that the token would go up, which, by the way, it did substantially, right? From the pre-seed investors, what they purchased at, to where the token went in 2021 to even where it is today. All of those pre-seed investors are still in profit if they sold today. Okay. So I failed to realize that there are different types of fraud. I didn't fail to realize that. You just didn't specify and haven't specified what type of fraud. So I was trying to be like broad, but like regardless of the fraud, like there is recklessness, right? Where you intentionally, like, you look at the truth, you acknowledge the truth, and you just completely disregard it, even though it's staring you in the face. That can constitute recklessness, which is a type of fraud, but you still have to demonstrate that you were harmed, that someone had said something, and like all of these things, those elements, like, still has to be met. So again, like, maybe they just don't understand that, but I do understand that there are different types of fraud with different criteria. And I failed to appreciate that he may be using the word in a more general sense, denoting basically the screwing over of investors, which it doesn't look like we are, according to the judge, intentionally or otherwise. You said with respect to timing that Ecomi didn't guarantee a deadline and are still working on utilities. True. I mean, they did put out deadlines. They did. Like, I mean, Mitch at one point said, hey, VV-verse by the end of, well, see, that's a VV-verse. That's not even like necessarily a utility of the OMI token, but failed to address the main point that he was making. And this is, I don't get why they continue to do this. So they say, would it be okay if 10 years pass without any OMI utility? I will be completely honest. If 10 years passed and I saw no movement towards OMI utility, I absolutely would not be okay with that. But it's not 10 years. It's 3 years. And here's a point that I think I didn't really touch on in the last video, but I think it's very important to this specific conversation. So OMI was developed to work in tandem with the app. That means that the functionalities of the app need to be there to add for the OMI token to have that utility. So Dan Crothers, and I have to shout out, it's Will Mai in the VV Vantage podcast, Mr. V. They did a great interview with Dan Crothers. And he talked about, and let me get my notes on this here, just because I want to make sure that I'm not misspeaking. Okay. So there's bronze tickets that are coming, right? But the bronze tickets are tied to the waitlist system. And Dan said in this interview that they had to rebuild the waitlist system due to scalability issues that they found. And he was really frustrated about it, and it shouldn't have happened. And it's taken a long time for them to build that out. And this is, taken a long time to rebuild, as it includes the payment systems, allocation systems, and the queuing systems. The bronze tickets will not work until that waitlist system works. So basically what I'm saying is they can have some utility built all ready to go, but until the queue system or the waitlist system is built out and some other functionalities in the app, the utility can't function. So yes, it was 3 years since the app was launched, but at the same time, and we have seen, the app has come a long way. There's still a long way for it to go, but they have to implement the things in the app for the utility to actually occur. So when they're saying that 3 years of no utilities, again, it's not like they're twiddling their thumbs. They have been building out this app, which is part of what needs to happen for the OMI utility to happen. So they say, see what I mean? There comes a point in which you have to bite the bullet and say, okay, this is not morally right. We've almost certainly been duped. I disagree. I don't like the timelines that we've been given, and they've definitely blown past a lot of them. But again, to say that we have been duped is to ignore what the team has been doing. You might feel like it's slow or whatever, but I've just demonstrated, right? I've talked about the crypto team or the blockchain team that they've hired. I talked about the OMI utility, which isn't great utility. I've never said it was great utility, and we'll talk about this a little bit. We'll just go to it right now. You said that there is OMI utility. First off, I'm genuinely unaware if anyone is even getting MCP points. I feel like that, for all the research that this person has done, they haven't asked a single individual in the VV fam if they're getting MCP points. I feel like, again, that statement is made in bad faith. Author, I am getting MCP points for my OMI that I'm soft staking in the app. There you go. I like that. And when things like this are said, again, you lose credibility, because it's like, really, like, you're going to bring that up? Like, you don't even know if the MCP points are being received for holding OMI. Like, have you been following VV's Twitter or Ecomi's? Like, it's all over the place. So I feel like, again, that argument's made in bad faith. Even if they are, these points cannot be used for anything yet, because the functionality of the system, that queue system, is not built out yet. So it can't be, but it's building towards that. And I'm still accruing them. And basically it's something other than nothing, right? So even that, it's not a good utility in that I can't use the points yet. It is accruing points, and I will eventually be able to use those points. So it is a utility. And I'm sorry that if you don't like that, but honestly, again, we would say, would a judge, if this was held up in court, agree that even though it's not good utility, it is some sort of utility? And especially if they can demonstrate how they're working towards the MCP points actually being worth something. I think the author loses the argument every time there. You said that the regulations are indeed a good justification for why Ecomi has not delivered on utility, claiming that the regulatory landscape is uncertain, and giving the example of the SEC suing companies under the regime of regulation by enforcement. That's what's been happening. That is an indisputable fact, FYI. Well, guess what? A court in the U.S. rejected Library, right, their fair notice defense, because Library had basically said, hey, like the regulations are unclear and we didn't know. And the judge said, hey, sorry, but it's not up to the SEC to notify every crypto company of the regulations and make sure that you understand them, right? That's the fair notice defense. So Library, like, they lost their lawsuit. By the way, Library raised funds in the US, right? So again, like Ecomi didn't. But in other words, the court found that the law was clear enough that Library should have known better in instance of raising the funds, and that constituted an investment contract, right? But here's the point. What the author is trying to do here is tie the fact that in the U.S. a company raised funds, and the court determined that raising those funds constituted an investment contract, and that they should have been aware of that, and they don't get away from that. But that it basically is constituting recklessness on the part of Ecomi for not knowing better. Like, that's the argument that's made. And it's like, well, if that's your argument, then literally every single cryptocurrency company in the entire industry has committed fraud, recklessness, because no one knows what the heck is going on. No one knows. And I've already given the perfect example. The chairman of the SEC, who is supposed to know what the law is, cannot tell us if Ethereum is a security. Guys, what the heck? And even if that's not enough for you, go ahead and Google regulatory uncertainty cryptocurrency and just look at the Wall Street Journal, at Forbes, at all of these major publications who are talking about regulatory uncertainty within the crypto space. So I'm sorry, but I think that a judge, in looking at that, again, there's a difference between saying you should have known that this would be a security and this constitutes recklessness, like towards fraud, completely different, right? And to say, hey, you should have known absolutely that some of the things that you were offering would constitute an investment contract. And because of that, you were reckless in the raising of this or the promises that you made. Good night, man. Like, that is such a weak argument. I'm sorry, it is. And again, you're trying to compare something that it's apples to oranges. The raising of investment contract and saying you should have known that was, and then being reckless and saying, hey, we're going to try to offer this utility, and then seeing the SEC come in and saying, hey, we think that tokens that are doing this, or companies that are doing this, we believe that they are all securities. Which, by the way, like, they're not winning all these court cases. And if the SEC, who's supposed to know the law, doesn't win all the court cases, then obviously there's some uncertainty there, and there needs more clarity, which is why Coinbase is now countersuing the SEC to say, give us guidelines, give us these things. So there we go. Now, again, the author is saying my argument would only hold water if regulations meaningfully changed. I completely disagree. I've just demonstrated how the industry is in flux because they have no idea what the heck is going on. Now, what's great is that the summary judgment that just happened with Ripple does give some clarity, which is why some of these tokens have been lifted and they're trading freely, whereas before they were locked down because they didn't know if it was considered a security when they were trading on the exchanges. So my argument about the IP brand scrutiny being a justification, give me 2 seconds here. Okay. My argument about IP brand scrutiny being a justification likewise falls short for the same reasoning found in the paragraph above. Well, I just disproved the paragraph above, so my argument about IP brand scrutiny holds water. You pointed out that I didn't call Tesla's missing of its own deadlines a fraud, accusing me of applying a double standard. Yeah, I did feel like it was a double standard where you were just saying, hey, Tesla, they missed some deadlines, and so like that's not good. But, it's because OMI is different and it's a currency and it's held to a different standard. That's why this one constitutes fraud. And they're saying, but again, this is a nuanced situation. Absolutely, it's a nuanced situation. I didn't bring up Tesla initially. You, in your argument, brought up Tesla. So then I responded to your argument about Tesla. So if Tesla wasn't a good argument, I don't like why did you bring it up? That deserves a case-by-case assessment of each and every promise. Sure, I agree. In the case of Ecomi, I've demonstrated that making promises to investors, we're not investors, according to that summary judgment, and then saying regulations caught them off guard is a case of recklessness. I disagree. And again, case of recklessness, you'd have to demonstrate that the truth was so widely known that anyone could look at that and basically say, come on, you should have known, when everyone is basically saying, we don't know what's going on. And I argue that making consistently reckless promises amounts to fraud. I just want to point something out. The whole post, and I do feel like this person is coming from, they're frustrated and they're concerned, but some of the statements here, especially from that first statement, could amount to like defamation, and there could be a lawsuit of libel with what they're saying here, basically calling them reckless and that they have defrauded investors is a massive, massive statement. So I don't know. I mean, I do feel like Ecomi would be well within their rights to actually slap a defamation lawsuit on the individual for this, especially as I've started to demonstrate a lot of the holes in the argument. Just my thoughts. You said that my point about my arguments continuing to be valid, even if Ecomi delivered utilities tomorrow, betrays my own former appeal to timing. So they had basically made a statement that like, okay, 3 years in, we have no utilities, but what if it was 10 years? And then they make this argument. Long story short, I demonstrated in the previous video how timing is not a standard of a fraud. Now, again, I think that I don't disagree with the argument that at some point you could say, hey, we're working on something here, but they're not really working on it. If you could demonstrate that, which, you would be able to do that during the phase in which you basically get all of the documentation that they have, and you can try to pour through that and see whether or not the team was actually, like the discovery phase, right? Whether or not the team was actually doing what they had said they had promised to do, what they were working on it. But anyways, timing is not a standard for fraud, but you could demonstrate that what it would be is, no matter the timing, if you could demonstrate that they had not ever been working on it, that would be the fraudulent part, right? But it's not necessarily to do with timing, but they try to make it an argument like it's part of a fraudulent argument. And it's not. I mean, that I've ever seen, like that's the thing. And I could be wrong with this, right? I'm not an attorney, but I mean, I did try to do some deep research and I couldn't find a single case of fraud that the person was actually convicted where it was because of timing, that they had promised something and it didn't happen within a certain amount of time. So I don't think that this author can use that argument unless they can actually substantially prove and give some good examples of where that's happened in the past. So on the other hand, when I say my arguments would be unaffected by Ecomi dropping utility tomorrow, that is in the context of my entire assessment having been retrospective. This is where I say you can't have it both ways. Like, you're trying in your arguments to say, well, if it happened in 10 years, would you be frustrated? Would you think that you've been defrauded? Well, why can't we use that same argument for the 3 years? And it's like, because 3 years isn't 10 years. And there's a lot that the team should be doing within 10 years that it might not be doing in 3 years. So like your time argument continues to just like not make sense to me. In other words, my arguments are based, and thus their validity is determined by what we know now and not on what we might know tomorrow. Indeed, it would still be messed up if they didn't deliver utilities for 3 years, even if they miraculously delivered tomorrow. Well, I feel your frustration. That's all I can say, right? Let me address the last thing here. Now, the simple question I pose to you is this: why are there no OMI utilities after 3 years? 3 years after the launch of the app? I feel like I addressed that in my commentary, that they have to build certain things in the app for the utility of the token to actually function, which I believe that they are building right now. So that's my answer to that. And that's not even to do with appealing to regulations or partner scrutiny. I still think that exists, and I've demonstrated why I think that exists, right? So those are my counter arguments to his counter arguments of my initial counter arguments. And look, so I'm gonna jump out of here. I'm gonna stop sharing the screen and let's jump into some of the comments here. What's up, John? Mark, appreciate you. I'm sorry I missed around the Ecomi verse. I was really bummed. I'm slammed. So I didn't even know if I was going to be able to do this live stream tonight, but I kind of promised people that I would respond by the next day. And so I didn't want to, not fulfill that. What's up, the biggest bro? If you don't know the biggest bro, he's one of the most positive, fun people in the space. He's got his own YouTube channel. Definitely check him out if you haven't. Super energetic, and that title is not wrong. One of the biggest bros I've ever met. He could squish me with his thumb. What's up, Crazy Dan? NFT Hero. Hey, shout out to you, NFT Hero. Appreciate your support. All Chat Gaming. That looks like you're not happy with my comments, I think. VV is such an evil company that they literally almost destroyed Will Battle China and threw Tails under the bus, all to avoid their VVverse demo. I don't even know what to say to that. Destroyed Will's channel. I love Will's channel, and I think it's actually grown. And Tails did a phenomenal job with the VVverse. So I don't know what to say there, man. Accusing company or anyone of fraud or anything is a serious matter. It's true. This is true. And there's a difference, right, between sitting there being like, look, people all the time are like, it's a scam, it's a rug. No one pays any attention to that, right? But when you write a thread that has over 100,000 impressions on Twitter, you better be real careful about the claims that you are making against a company. And again, you better be able to back that up. And the problem is they don't know what's going on. They don't know what's going on behind the scenes. I think that a defamation lawsuit that would be a slam dunk for that. So anyways, hey, Seahawk fan, let's hear it, man. Write a thread, provide screenshots. Remember, there are 9 elements, to really demonstrate that that's happened. But I'm open. Look, guys, this, I have purchased the OMI token, hoping that there's utility and that people see value in it down the road at a higher value than I purchased it at. I feel like I'm very transparent about that, So I do take any claims like this very seriously, and I try to look through that. And it's funny because when I say something and people don't agree with me, then they just call me a moon boy. And I will say that there is some bias towards VV, but at the same time, I know that I have to step back and say, all right, do I need to stop purchasing? What are the concerns here? Could this all go to zero? And I have to analyze that. And I feel like this is what I'm doing, and I'm trying to do it for you guys. I spend a lot of time in this thing, and part of it is I'm in the regulatory space, right? So I know where to look for things, and I understand certain things, but I'm still not perfect on that. And that's why I also offer for people to make counter arguments, and I'll listen to that. I don't block most people who disagree with me, because I feel like there's a lot I can learn, and there's things that I could be missing. But a lot, the majority of the loudest people that are VV fudders, they're just trolls. And it's just they jump on any potentially bad thing that happens, and they're there laughing at the VV fan and saying we're all, idiots or whatever it is, right? But they're never there to then be like, when VV does something great, they'll be like, you know what, that's pretty awesome, right? And right there you can just say, well, those are the people I'm going to listen to, because they're not being objective, and I'm trying to listen to objective people who I may disagree with there. And I think that you guys should too. Cut out that toxicity, whoever it is, right? If they're attacking you personally for anything, just block them. It's not worth your time or anyone's time, right? O'Malley, this is the last back and forth, man. I'm not doing this again. I feel like I rest my case, and people can agree with me or not agree with me. But I did feel like it was so important, because of the significant amount of impressions that the tweets have had, to offer a more in-depth discussion on some of the points that they kind of flippantly make, right? They just are like, oh, in contrast to the Ripple case, where people didn't know that they were, investing in OMI or XRP, or what XRP was. Everyone knows who Ecomi is. And I'm like, how can you prove that statement? How can you prove that statement? And on top of that, you got to know that the judge knew that there were people who knew who Ripple was when they purchased XRP, and she still made that determination. So, yeah, sorry, Bobby, man. Like I said, oh, Bobby got me live. I got you. Hey, good to see you, Bobby. I know it's later time, man. I'm tired. It's been a long day. Jimbo Lingo, as I say every stream that I see you, I appreciate you and your positive vibes and support. Thank you very much. What's up, Omicron? Yeah, tune in. Like I feel like it's important to start from the beginning and really listen to everything. Thank you, Crypto Cosmo. Appreciate you. To it. Hey, look, if the author can use big words, I can't even remember the word he used. It was like, it started with an E, and I was like, bro, like I need to look that up. I don't know. So why not throw something in there too? This guy's correct. Expand on that. What you mean, NFT Hero? 5 years. So 5 years since the company launched, right? But 3 years since the VV app actually launched. And if you guys recall the VV app, when it first, I mean, I was there in March of 21, and it was like the drops would freeze, and they'd be like, and it would just shut down, and no one knew anything. And then all of a sudden, like either the app would all suddenly just work, and you were like trying to buy the drop, or they'd be like, hey, we're going to reopen it in 10 minutes. And you're just like scrambling. It's come a long way. But again, yeah. Is Hello K gone for good? I don't know. Look, if someone, like, I feel like Hello K, he's lost faith in the team and the company. And so sounds like he is. I think he makes comments here and there, right? But he's not actively, FUD posting or anything. I think he's moved on. And I think that anyone who truly doesn't believe in the team should move on, right? Like, okay, let me take it back. There are some people who have found a community in the VV fam, right? And so they might not trust the team, but still want to be a part of the fam. And that's cool. Like, welcome you with open arms, right? Stay here, chill and stuff. But don't be that person who's attacking people because they're enjoying the app or they do believe in the team, right? Again, you can attack arguments, but once you start attacking people, I basically say, look, you obviously don't have a real argument. Otherwise, you'd be attacking my argument. And because you're just attacking me, then like why should I listen to you, and why should I not block you, right? Like, you're not adding any value to the conversation. So many people are gone. You know what? There are a lot of people gone in every single project out there. Tons of them. Guys, I am in so many different projects, like some that are live, some that aren't, and the FUD is rampant everywhere. And especially for the tokens that I've invested in 2 years ago that still haven't launched, and the claims of fraud there. I mean, it's all over the place. And I think that we have to take a step back and look holistically. Now, what you're starting to see is some people coming back, right? Because tokens going up, and all of a sudden things are okay. But for the tokens that haven't pumped comparatively, there's still a lot of FUD there. So it is sad. It is sad to see people go, right? Right, Mark. Like I said, I feel like it's like, really, you're going to throw that in there that you're not aware of anyone who's getting MCP points. Get him. Look, I mean, I disagreed with a lot of Hello K's arguments, but like I was friendly with K. I thought like he was cool in real life. I met him, talked to him. Like I liked Hello K. So yeah, like that's my stance on it. That's not a small amount of MCP points, and it would be interesting to see how we are able to use those. And I'm excited for that, right? I'm excited, and I really hope that in this time that they've had while MCP points are accumulating, they're really working at ways to make those MCPs actually worth something, right? To really reward the collectors. That's a big thing that I feel like is on their shoulders, is making sure that is successful. Yeah, like I said. Who did? You did, Justin, or people? Yep. People lost millions in Bitcoin. People lost millions in ETH. Like, people have lost millions in a lot of tokens. It depends on where you buy and when you sell, So it's just something to think about. Okay. So look, I had made a statement about what the crazy thing that OMI could go to, and if all things were firing on all cylinders, all these things happen. I've got to walk back on that, right? And again, I got to say, like, I'm not perfect, and I do try to make sure that, like, I admit I am open to saying, like, I am wrong, and I feel like as an investor, I have to do that. I have to say, take my emotions out of it and say, like, I am wrong. So I think in a bull run, like, there's so many variables that, like, it depends. It depends on if the token hits a narrative. If OMI, like, for whatever reason, if it's AR/VR narrative that happens, and VV has these 3D assets, and so everyone's stoked in there, like, saying, hey, like, what crypto projects are out there that are tied to AR and VR? OMI could pump crazy on just that. That has nothing to do with utility. Guys, the crypto space, so much of it is just pure speculation, and it's the greater fool theory of, I'm going to buy this because I think there's a greater fool who will buy it for me for more than what I paid for it, right? And you see that all the time, and it is why, to a certain extent, I do think it's funny that people are freaking out about utility. I'm okay with them freaking out about utility because it was promised. So from that standpoint, but when people think that because if we had utility, the token would be pumping, I don't necessarily agree with that, only because there are all these tokens out there with literally no utility, and they pump like crazy because there's a narrative, or there's just this speculative bubble on something, and the token pumps. But I do think over time, with the tokenomics, if we can burn OMI, and there is a true use case that people want to hold the token for its utility, that to me is bullish. And we don't have a lot of projects that are out there that are actually really working towards that, who are also tied to so many major IPs. So interesting. I didn't know. Expound on that. I didn't see Randy getting frustrated. Nest surfing. I don't know what that means. Tesla's going to 0-2. I've heard a lot of complaints about Teslas. Hey, what's up, Randy? I love Randy. Yep. Let's see. Only trash, but we all hold. I mean, it doesn't do much right now, right? We've got that utility, but like I do think that things are coming. I do believe that the team is building, and I've had conversations in person with the team. Nothing like, non-public or whatever. Just ask them questions about it and just got to know them, and that has established additional trust that I think that people who have never met them wouldn't have the ability to get a gauge of, like, who these individuals are. So. All right, Randy's kind of, saying, hey, perfectly fine with OMI being down here. Let's another 2 quarters, I'll get 200 million. This is where, like, Randy is more bullish on the token than I am. I'm bullish on OMI. I'm obviously buying at these prices. I think that it will do well, but I cannot be like an almost single token person. I tip my cap to Randy and the steel cojones this guy has to the majority of his crypto holdings is in one token. And again, like I wouldn't even do that with Bitcoin because I'm trying to get like a larger gain, right? So I definitely hold some Bitcoin, but I hold a lot of other projects too. And even though, like, Bitcoin to me is a blue chip crypto, I don't just hold that. I mean, that's steel, buddy. Love to hear what Randy was frustrated about. Tesla did win the decade in electronic vehicles right now. Yeah, I mean, yep. And I definitely think that VV, with respect to digital collectibles, definitely has beat out any other platform out there to date. So I always share this quote. I often share this quote, right? And I just hope that people try to internalize it, is from Warren Buffett, right? And we can like the stock market is the mechanism for transferring wealth from the inpatient to the patient. Like that is such a powerful statement, right? And the crypto market is a mechanism for transferring wealth from the inpatient to the patient, right? Think about all the people who left as Bitcoin dropped from 69,000 where they probably bought it and they just panicked and they sold, right? So they bought at the top and lost their money there. And then the people who waited until 18,000 and were stacking at 18,000 and where they're at now, and they're still holding because they believe that Bitcoin is going to go up even more. So they were patient enough to wait for that dip, right? And maybe they bought at 45,000 and people are still holding. They didn't sell at a loss and they're saying, you know what, I'm going to wait. And if it gets above 45,000, that's when I will sell. Now, there's no guarantee that it'll go back above that, right? But in general, one of the things that Warren Buffett does, right, is he buys when people are fearful and he sells when people are greedy. And that's the thing, is the price is going up, people are getting greedy and they're like, I want those gains, so I'm going to buy in at this. And that's when he's selling into their hands, right? It's the whole crypto rain thing of buy low, sell high. And it's tough. Guys, this is tough. This is a perfect example of it's tough when you're sitting there and there's all this FUD around us. And for me, like I try to listen to the people with reasonable objections to what's happening or frustrations and say, okay, this new information, does this impact my investment thesis for this project, whether it's OMI or if it's like a completely different company, right? And I have sold out of projects where it's just like, I'm out. And I've gotten rugged and I've lost, to projects that like they went to zero and I held. But I've definitely made gains on others, right? So yeah, like I just identify with this statement, Randy. Like obviously we're all in crypto to get massive gains, right? Win Lambo, but at the same time, like there is a matter of patience, and it doesn't always pay off, but when it pays off, it can pay off big. So Randy, do you know something we don't know? What do you know that we don't know? Tell us so that we know. Hey, appreciate you, Truck and Hank. And again, I appreciate everyone who's here and takes time out of their day to go through this. Is there anything else that you guys want me to talk about real quick before we go? The main purpose, right, was to address that tweet. I will not be making another video. Like I said, work is slamming me. But again, I wanted to hopefully provide value to those who are truly concerned about some of the things that the individual brought up. Again, I'm not an attorney. This is my assessment. I could be wrong in all of that. Another big disclaimer there. But I feel like I have the support there. And at least I feel like my argument makes logical sense. Look, the original tokenomics, I do believe like the burn buybacks was an exciting mechanism. We were pumped. And I can guarantee you that the reason that stopped was because of regulation. I promise you that. So that was some kind of funny drama, right? About getting blocked. That was funny. I don't know. Even if they did, isn't OMI not supposed to be available for us in the US? No. I mean, look, again, if that judgment summary is correct, then once you've raised the funds and launched the token and it's traded on the secondary market, it no longer constitutes an investment contract. And so there's no reason why they can't list it in the US. And I believe that is why I can buy, sell, and trade XRP on Coinbase right now. What's up, Scorpio 11? I don't know if that's Roman numerals, Scorpio XI, Scorpioxy. Appreciate you, Harish. FTC's Bureau of Consumer Protection stops unfair, deceptive, and fraudulent business practices exist for a reason. They're not saying Levy committed fraud, but deceptive. Maybe to some, I don't know. So I'm pretty familiar with So it's not it's the consumer. Hold on, CFTC, Consumer Finance. No, that's Trade Commission. CFPB, Consumer Finance. Uh, Man, see, now you got me thinking. I don't remember what the acronym stands for. Um, here's the thing that I'll say. I can agree. I can see how some would say like this is deceptive. I'm not gonna. I don't know. I can't necessarily argue that. I also can say I don't know what happened behind the scenes. I try to make educated assumptions, but this is my complaint that I straight up told to David Yu, right? I said the VV fan would love more transparency in things. So, for example, the whole thing that I brought up about the weight system. How long have they been working on that? This is the first time that we heard that that's been like the big holdup. I love that they told us that, but why did it take so long? I think it's important as much as they can, and there are things with whether it's NDAs or contracts, right? There's just some things that VB will have to remain silent on. They have to because it would be a breach of contract, and they can get in a lot of trouble with that, right? And it's the same with the securities or the tokens, like the way that the team talks about the token. Honestly, like until they get some more clarity on that, I feel like they are trying to protect us. And can I just appeal to your guys' senses of logic for just one moment, right? Let's take away all the frustration and just ask yourself this. Why? Okay. Do you believe that it would be beneficial for Vivi and the team if the token's price was up? I believe that yes, the Vivi team, all of them would benefit if the token price was up. So if they would benefit from all of that, from having exchanges, all of these things, and they're not doing it, even though it would benefit them and it would stop all of this FUD, you have to step back and ask yourself, why? Why are they not doing that? Right? And so then when I point to these things like regulatory uncertainty, that's out there, and I very substantially demonstrated how that's the case. And there are a lot of projects out there that have those concerns that at least provides a reasonable explanation. And I hear it all the time of blah, blah, blah. That's always the excuse you give. And like, it's just because like, you're a moon boy and this excuse. I'm like, okay, like, look, I'm not going to continue to argue with you. This is my belief. This is how I'm acting. I'm not going to try to talk you into staying if you don't want to stay, but I'm going to provide you with information so that you can make a more informed decision. That's my whole point. Is the internet real? Let's get philosophical with that, Justin. That's so good. Hey, thanks, Tammy. I appreciate you too. I appreciate like you're very positive in the space and just very friendly and go lucky. I seen you on Randy's channel. It just awesome. So I appreciate you. Appreciate you, fam. Didn't know I had a channel or the biggest bro. The biggest bro, yeah, he's got a channel. Definitely follow him if you haven't. But man, I do think that they are like things are improving. And here's my prediction, and I could be way off on this, but I do believe that once this queue system is developed, and Dan, I have notes, guys. I listened to the AMA and I painstakingly was like, all right, at minute X, second X, here was the question, who asked the question, and what did Dan say? Because like I really wanted to understand. So let me see, because I have the notes here. See. Now, I do remember that Dan was like, don't hold me to this timeline, which is fair. But he said he's hoping for the wait list to be integrated by the end of the year. And then he's like, you may be able to also use your MCP to purchase non-IP items from the store, like accessories. They have a long roadmap for MCP and are committed to building that, right? So that's directly from the team. Only attack silly billies. I promise you, in general, if you can just don't even respond. And I am not perfect at it. I sometimes get sucked in and I respond, but the more that you can just ignore those people, and that's why the block button or the mute button is great. Like don't waste your energy, guys, like on that, right? Like it's not worth it. So appreciate you, Bean Tech. Let's see. I think the Canadian lost millions. Walk back on my prediction. It's always possible. Oh yeah, about where the token could be. I mean, anything's possible. It is like that prediction is pretty outlandish, and I think that my intent was more to say like we just don't know. We just don't know. There are things like if you look at previous pumps, there are tokens that you're just like there is no way this should have been in the billions of dollars of a market cap. Yet here it is, right? So I just think that this time is significantly different than any other time in any of the other pumps, right? That potential bull runs. There's no guarantee that the bull run's happening, but there's so many things lining up. And when you talk about institutional money finally being able to get into that, and retail money, and the Bitcoin halving, and accounting rules changing, all of these things that have never existed before, and AI, oh man, guys, and blockchain gaming. And like now, one thing that I think has to happen, and this is still up in the air, right, is the Fed has got to ease its monetary policy stance. There's got to be money pumping into the market, right? And if that doesn't happen, that could definitely hamper things or make it like a slower bull run, and it might not hit like a high top, right? Like that's something to talk about or take into consideration as well. It may like I'm just dollar cost averaging. I am loving these lower prices because again, we saw that the OMI token went from around like 0.0055 to over 0.001 on one announcement of utility, where whales started to buy and they're like, you know what, or like they were just like, I want that utility, I want to use that off of one announcement, right? So imagine what happens if there's multiple announcements and it's kind of building steam as the bull market is starting to ramp up as well, and we do get an exchange. The token could do very well, and so at these prices, I feel like the risk is a lot lower, even if it just does a 2x, right? Like that's why I am buying a lot of other tokens, but like I do expect to get gains from OMI. I personally believe I'll get very, very good gains from it, but even if I didn't, buying at these prices, the risk, if other things happen and the team does implement some of these utilities, or just being that they simply exist during a bull run, tokens and projects typically pump. They just do. So it's so true, man. Oh man, Wes, I can't believe how many times he's commented on my prediction. $10 soon. Okay, yeah, Cavell. Look, that's the thing, right? I had to be lower than Cavell, so I can always be like, look. Someone else said 10. Someone said $10. So, Doctor thinks his stuff. Let's FUD me to buy it at lower lows. Yeah, look. I feel like I do take a softer approach in general to everything, though. Look, like the back cows thing, there's a lot of people who are extremely upset about the back cows and the lack of promises that they have kept, right? Where's overdrive? Where's our interoperability? We were kind of talking like there's implications of like our assets being gamified, or that they were metaverse ready, and all of these things, and nothing's happened. And I'm just like, look, it takes time to build. And I think that as long as there continues to be pressure from the community, like healthy pressure from the community, projects can pivot and get better. And I think that that's helpful and necessary. Cavell next. I don't know. Cavell's been kind of pro Vivi lately. That would be interesting. Cavell is a very interesting person, and it saddened me the day that it looked like he basically sold out to Quid, and Quid was so much better in so many ways than Vivi, and I was like, all right, bro, like credibility just shot. He still makes some decent points though. Every once in a while, I'll read something, I'm like, that was well said, that was well put. yeah, I guess I don't know what I'd argue with him about, but like, I mean, I don't mind having a debate with anyone. I feel like I could go toe to toe with anyone. Um, True, he invested in stocks, not crypto, but he invested in companies that people like wouldn't invest in. And the stock market can be very perilous and risky too. People lose their entire savings in stock markets. Crypto is very volatile. So look, Dr. Digital Meme, if you don't like that statement being applied to crypto, it's not for you. Totally get it right. For me, I definitely believe that. I definitely believe in patience. And I look at someone like Crypto Rain, right? And he was very patient with Cardano. He was buying when people were calling Cardaleno and it was ghostware and like it was a fraud. People like I mean it was just like all over the Twitterverse how Cardano was terrible, right? And it was from 70 cents down to like 3 cents or 1.7 cents or something like that. And he's like, I'm buying. I'm buying, I'm buying. And then it pumped to like over $3 and he made millions from it because he was patient. So that's just a single example. And it's not, it doesn't happen to a lot of people because a lot of people aren't patient enough or they don't believe in a project enough. They don't do the research enough, right? And they just want to follow what everyone else is doing. And again, they're chasing green candles and you can make money that way, but it's riskier because you've bought after the token's already pumped. And so your entry point, it has to go a lot higher for you to get the like substantial gains compared to the person who bought it a lot lower. Simply as that. Hates crypto. He does hate crypto. Look, there are some old school people that are very successful in traditional finance that just hate crypto. What's his name? That I mean, he just kind of came up and people have been sharing it. Um, he's it'll come to me. Maybe someone knows in the comments, but he's this traditional finance guy, and like he basically is like you should only use cash, don't ever use credit cards. But he was like, you can't trust Bitcoin. What if one of those computer nerds accidentally turns off the Bitcoin switch? It's just like, what? It just shows that they didn't put the time into it. But even the CEO of BlackRock, he used to totally trash Bitcoin, right? And now what is he doing? They're applying for a Bitcoin spot ETF. He's talking about how the Bitcoin is digital gold, right? They can flip. So I'm waiting for that day when Warren Buffett flips. Maybe he won't. I'm with you, Tammy. I literally bought OMI 4 days ago, and like there's just a lot of projects that I'm looking at and researching. So like I'm trying to like spread it out. I'm really interested in a lot of gaming tokens. I'm also very interested in launch pads that are tied to the gaming industry as well. So like Engine Starter is one of those, and I'm really excited on the gains I've gotten from the Engine Starter token. Um, I do too, man. I really hope Randy makes it. He does put so much time and dedication, and he really is dedicated to it. He truly believes. I don't think that there's a single person who believes more in Vivi and Ecomi and the team than even the team. Yeah. I don't know. It is phenomenal. Like I just yeah, it's amazing. Um, Okay, all right. You can disagree with me. They're not the same. Stocks and crypto are not the same um, for a lot of reasons. I agree. But that's just my magic internet coins. It's true. Uh, oh, that's such an epic show. Um, hey, I appreciate you, Atomic. This is the first time I've seen you on the channel. Thank you very much. Um, yeah. I think I'm gonna wrap it up here in just a second. I appreciate y'all for the stream. I'm just gonna get through all of these. What if Pokemon? I th- I don't think that it's out of the question, but I don't know when that's gonna happen. Um, or ditches Omi. I first of all, I guess you got to ask yourself why they would. Like it is a possibility. I put it as a very low probability that the team ditches Omi for multiple reasons. Um, they own a lot of Omi, so they would be walking away from a lot of money on that. And also, if they do that, then I do believe that they open up themselves to substantial lawsuits on that. So I don't know, but you say it could be a possibility. Yes, and I try to assess that like all the time. I constantly trying to assess any project that I'm in and saying, what are the risks? What are the possibilities? How high of a probability is that? And does that change? Like, do I need to get out of this? Right. So for me, from everything I'm seeing right now, although it's always going to be a possibility, I think it's a very low probability for me. Shout out to you, Nos Clint. Appreciate you, man. Nos Clint, you're an OG, and I definitely appreciate my gold and silver logo from you. Thank you, Sham. Uh, I don't know what the Doc Aka are you Aka? I don't know what that means. Dave Ramsey. That's who it was. Yes, Dave Ramsey. Uh, Doc Aka. Doc Aka. Okay, I don't know. I don't know what that is. All right. Jasmine or Miria to have Ada returns. We'll see. What do you mean by that? Jasmine or Miria to have Ada returns? Sham. You purchased in 2018, even at these prices, you've got to be substantially up. That is phenomenal, and that shows strong belief in the token. I will say this: what I learned in the last kind of cycle, I caught the tail end of it. There was a lot of tokens that I did hold on for too long, and I regret. Right. So when I talk about patience, there is a point in time where you got to say, hey, I'm not going to be too greedy, and I'm going to start selling at different levels. So that is something that I am doing, is making sure that I try to take the emotion out of it. And I say, with all these projects, what are the price points at which I start to sell a percentage of my portfolio? And I ride that wave up. And so even if like I think it's going up and it doesn't and it stops here, I've at least sold along the way and made gains that way. Right. And then if it's dipping, I might sell a little bit on like as it's going down. If I'm concerned about the token or where the industry is headed. But then at least I've made some, right? But I will always hold of every project a little moon bag just in case, because I've heard too many stories from some of the people who have been OGs investing in the space since like 2014, where they were just like, oh man, like I got into Shiba Inu super early and I sold all of it at $400 and it would have turned into $8 million. Like I will always hold a little moon bag just in case with that. But appreciate you too, Nos Clint, and with this. So Miria, I have a Miria node, and I am loving it. Right, I did research in the project a year and a half ago, and bought one of the nodes in like a pre-seed investment, and I'm bullish on it. And man, if that pulls anything like what Gala did, I will be a millionaire just off Miria alone. So we'll see. All right. Yeah, with this, Amili T's, one of my favorite people in the space. If you haven't listened to his Twitter spaces, he holds epic Twitter spaces. Super funny, intelligent guy. And one of the things that I've loved that he started to do is try to educate people on Twitter as well about diversification. And he's hosting a lot of very educated people in the space and talking about that. And I highly uh, suggest that you jump into his spaces. So with that, everyone, thanks so much for your time. Have a wonderful evening. Peace out.